Rain slammed against the glass as security dragged Mariah Sterling out of the executive floor, her termination letter crushed in her fist like evidence of a crime nobody would admit. Inside the boardroom, men laughed, already rewriting her value to 0. Across the city, a live security feed froze. A Korean man in a dark penthouse leaned forward, eyes narrowing, not in surprise but in fury, because the greedy CEO had just fired his best secretary for being black and had no idea the woman being escorted out was legally his wife. The owner of the company stood up, and Seoul's balance of power shifted in that instant. The CEO made the mistake of his life. Don't make yours by missing the ending. This story spans from the corporate boardrooms to the deepest corners of the underworld. Before the first head rolls, drop your flag in the comments so I know where you're watching from. And hit that subscribe button to join the family. You don't want to be on the outside when the real war starts. The CEO's smile was thin and satisfied, like he'd waited weeks to enjoy this moment. "You're dismissed," he said, not bothering to hide the contempt. "And before you argue, this isn't negotiable." Mariah held her box of desk items against her chest like armor. Her curvy figure looked almost too soft for the cold room, but her eyes were sharp. Hurt, yes, but unbroken. "May I ask why?" she said, voice steady. The CEO leaned back in his leather chair. "Because you're not a fit for this brand anymore." Mariah blinked once. "I've been your best secretary for 3 years." A few executives behind him avoided her gaze. They'd enjoyed her competence when it made their lives easy. Now they were enjoying her downfall because it made them feel safe. The CEO's eyes slid over her like she was dirt on a shoe. "Let's not pretend you don't understand. Investors want a certain look." Mariah's throat tightened. She didn't flinch. "So this is about me being black." A beat. Then the CEO chuckled, like she'd said something childish. "It's about professionalism." Mariah nodded slowly, swallowing rage so it didn't spill in the wrong place. "You'll regret this." The CEO's smile widened. "No, you will. Security will escort you out." Mariah turned before the sting in her eyes could become tears. She walked out with her chin high, heels clicking, shoulders squared. Behind her, the CEO's phone lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number. He answered, still smug. "Yes?" A calm voice replied, soft as velvet and sharp as a blade. "You fired my wife." The CEO froze. "Who is this?" A pause. Then the voice said, almost politely, "The man who owns your entire life." The call ended, and somewhere in Seoul, a storm began moving. Later that afternoon, Mariah stepped into the elevator of her apartment building, box heavy in her arms, heart heavier in her chest. The metal doors slid shut. She finally let a shaky breath out. She'd promised herself she wouldn't need anyone. Not after growing up learning that excellence wasn't always enough. Not after discovering that people could applaud you in public and cut you in private. The elevator chimed. Mariah walked down the hall, unlocked her door, and stepped into silence. Her apartment was small but clean, minimal, controlled, a place she could breathe without performing. She set the box down, kicked off her heels, and stared at the wall for a long moment, like she was waiting for her life to explain itself. Then her phone vibrated. No caller ID, just a message. "Come outside." Mariah's pulse jumped. Her thumb hovered. Another message came instantly. "Now." She didn't answer. She moved to the window carefully and peeled the curtain back. A black car waited at the curb like it belonged there. 2 men in suits stood beside it, still as statues, scanning the street. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out. Korean. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dark hair neatly styled. A black coat that looked like it had never lost a fight. Even from this distance, the air seemed to change around him. Mariah's heart forgot how to beat properly. Han Sing-jun, her husband. The secret she'd kept locked so tight even she sometimes forgot it was real. A few weeks earlier, she'd signed the marriage papers in silence, part protection, part contract, part something neither of them admitted was already turning into hunger. Seung-joon lifted his gaze. He looked straight at her window like he could see through glass, through walls, through her stubbornness. Mariah's breath caught. He didn't wave, he didn't smile, he just waited, and the waiting felt like possession. A few minutes later, the knock came at her door. Not loud, not frantic, controlled. Mariah opened it and found one of the suited men standing there, expression respectful. "Mrs. Han," he said. She hated how that title made her skin heat. "Your husband is requesting you come with us." Mariah's jaw tightened. Requesting. The man's eyes flicked down the hall, polite but careful. "It is safer if you do." Mariah's stomach sank. Safer from what? The man didn't answer. That silence was the answer. Later that night, Mariah sat in the back seat of the black car, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Seoul's lights blurred past the tinted windows like a movie she didn't choose to star in. Seung-joon sat beside her. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak, but his presence filled the cabin like heat pressed against skin. Mariah stared ahead, refusing to look at him first. "Are you hurt?" he asked finally, voice low. Mariah's throat tightened. "No." Seung-joon's gaze stayed on her profile. "Did he touch you?" Mariah snapped her eyes to him. "What?" Seung-joon didn't blink. His calm was too quiet to be normal. "The CEO." Mariah swallowed. "No." Seung-joon's jaw flexed, one small betrayal of emotion. "Good." Mariah's anger sparked. "You're acting like I'm property." Seung-joon's gaze darkened. "I'm acting like you are my wife." Mariah's pulse jumped hard. She hated that it affected her. She hated that she liked it. The car turned into a private garage. The doors closed behind them. Mariah stepped out into quiet luxury. White lights, polished concrete, guards positioned like shadows. She glanced at Seung-joon. "Where are we?" "My residence," he said. Mariah scoffed softly. "You mean your fortress?" Seung-joon didn't deny it. "You're staying here." Mariah's eyes flashed. "No." Seung-joon turned fully toward her, voice still controlled. "Yes." Mariah stepped closer, chin lifted. "You don't get to decide where I sleep." Seung-joon's eyes held hers. "Tonight I do." Mariah's breath caught, anger and fear tangling. "Why?" she demanded. Seung-joon's voice dropped. "Because firing you was not the end. It was the beginning." Mariah stared. "Of what?" Seung-joon's gaze sharpened like he was seeing 10 moves ahead. "A message." Mariah's stomach tightened. "To who?" "To me," he said simply. The elevator opened into a penthouse so clean it felt dangerous. Glass walls, city views, a silence that didn't comfort. It warned. Mariah stepped in and stopped. A folded outfit sat on the couch, her size. A warm drink waited on the table. Her favorite tea, the one she never told anyone she liked. Mariah's eyes narrowed. "How—" Seung-joon's voice was quiet. "I pay attention." She swallowed. "This is too much." Seung-joon stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. "So was what they did to you." Mariah's throat tightened. "I'm fine." Seung-joon's gaze dropped briefly to her hands, still shaking, barely. Then back up. "No," he said, calm but firm. "You're surviving." Mariah's chest burned. "I didn't ask you to come." Seung-joon's eyes darkened. "You didn't have to." A beat. Then he said something that made her blood run cold. "I listened to the recording." Mariah blinked. "What recording?" Seung-joon's jaw tightened. "Your termination meeting was recorded." Mariah's stomach dropped. "That's illegal." Seung-joon's expression didn't change. "So is what they plan next?" Mariah's pulse spiked. "What do they plan?" Seung-joon walked to a wall screen and tapped it. A video file opened. The CEO's voice filled the room, smug and cruel. The word brand again. The implication again. The quiet racism dressed in business language. Mariah's throat tightened until it hurt. When it ended, Seung-jun didn't look at the screen. He looked at her. "I will ruin him," he said. Mariah's breath shook. "No." Seung-jun's gaze sharpened. "No?" Mariah stepped forward, voice trembling with anger and fear. "I don't want you destroying people because someone was hateful. I want to rebuild my life, not burn yours." Seung-jun's expression softened, barely but enough to make her chest ache. "My life has been burning for years," he said quietly. "You're the first thing that felt clean." Mariah stared at him, pulse loud in her ears. "Don't say things like that," she whispered. "Why?" he asked, voice lower. "Because then I'll start believing you," she said. Seung-jun's gaze dropped to her mouth for a fraction of a second, so fast she almost missed it. Almost. Mariah felt heat rise anyway. Later that night, Mariah stood in the guest room doorway, arms folded, refusing to unpack. Seung-jun stood across the hall, jacket off, sleeves rolled, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was calm, but every word sounded like a threat wrapped in silk. "Freeze their access," he said. "The CEO, the board, every account tied to them." A pause. "Tonight?" He ended the call and finally turned to her. Mariah's pulse jumped again. "You're really doing this," she said. Seung-jun walked closer, not rushing, like he knew she'd bolt if he moved too fast. "They touched what's mine." Mariah's eyes flashed. "There it is again." Seung-jun stopped a step away. "Tell me what you want me to say." Mariah swallowed. "Say I'm not yours." Seung-jun's gaze held hers, steady and intense. "That would be a lie." Mariah's breath caught. "We married on paper, Seung-jun. It was supposed to be quiet, safe." Seung-jun's voice dropped. "It stopped being quiet the second they fired you to remind you where they think you belong." Mariah's throat tightened. "And now?" Seung-jun leaned in slightly, not touching, but close enough she could feel his warmth. "Now," he said, "they learn where you actually belong." Mariah's breath turned shaky. "Don't make me your war." Seung-jun's eyes softened again, dangerously. "Then be my peace." Mariah stared at him. Her heart did something traitorous. The next day, Seung-jun insisted on driving her himself. Mariah resisted the moment she saw the car. "You have bodyguards," she said. "Use them." Seung-jun opened the passenger door for her. "Get in," Mariah glared. "Stop ordering me." Seung-jun looked at her, expression unreadable. "Fine." He stepped closer, voice low. "Mariah, please." The politeness startled her more than an order would have. Her pulse jumped. She got in. They drove to a corporate building near the river, one of Seung-jun's public companies, the ones the world thought were just clean investments. Mariah stepped into the lobby and felt eyes turn, not because she was black, because the guards straightened when they saw Seung-jun beside her, because the receptionist swallowed nervously, because people moved out of their way as if the floor itself belonged to him. A man in a crisp suit approached with a bright smile. Too bright, too eager. "Chairman Han," he said warmly. Then he turned to Mariah. "And you must be the new assistant." Mariah's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression calm. "I'm not anyone's assistant." The man chuckled like she was cute. "Of course, I'm Dr. Park Jin-woo, company physician. Welcome." Mariah offered a polite nod, trying to move past him, but Jin-woo stepped with her, smiling easily. "If you need anything, orientation, building access, lunch recommendations, I'm happy to help." Mariah opened her mouth to decline. Seung-jun's voice cut in, calm and cold. "She won't need you." Jin-woo blinked, smile faltering. "I was only—" Seung-jun's gaze pinned him. "I know what you were doing." A sharp silence. Mariah's pulse stuttered. Jealousy. Possessive, ugly, real. Jin-woo cleared his throat and stepped back. "Understood, Chairman." Mariah turned to Seung-Jun the second they were alone in the elevator. "What was that?" she hissed. Seung-Jun didn't blink. "He was flirting." "So?" Mariah snapped. "I'm not dead. People flirt." Seung-Jun's jaw flexed. "Not with you." Mariah stared. "Excuse me?" Seung-Jun's gaze darkened. "Not when you're with me." Mariah's chest burned. "You're being ridiculous." Seung-Jun stepped closer, voice low enough to curl around her nerves. "Yes." The honesty threw her off. Mariah swallowed. "Why?" Seung-Jun's eyes held hers. "Because the thought of another man making you smile makes something violent wake up inside me." Mariah's breath caught. "You can't say things like that," she whispered. Seung-Jun's voice dropped further. "You asked why. I answered." The elevator chimed. The doors opened, and a woman in a sharp suit stepped in. Han Soo-jin, Seung-Jun's right hand, eyes alert, expression urgent. "Chairman," Soo-jin said, glancing at Mariah with quick respect. "We have a problem." Seung-Jun's entire posture changed. "Speak." Soo-jin handed him a tablet. Mariah leaned in and saw a headline draft on a gossip site, scheduled to publish in an hour. "Fired Black Secretary Caught with Mystery Billionaire Escort Rumors Swirl." Mariah's stomach dropped. She looked at Seung-Jun, voice tight. "They're doing this to destroy me." Seung-Jun's face went still. "They're doing it to force you away from me." Mariah's pulse spiked. "Why would they care?" Seung-Jun cut in, voice cold. "Because my CEO is greedy. He thinks humiliating you proves he still has power." Mariah's throat tightened. "And he doesn't." Seung-Jun's gaze sharpened. "No." Soo-jin swallowed. "There's more. We intercepted a message. A rival group has eyes on her. They're calling her the Leverage." Mariah's breath hitched. "Leverage." Seung-Jun turned to her slowly, his voice softened, only for her. "Stay close." Mariah's eyes flashed with panic and anger. "I don't want this life." Seung-Jun's gaze held hers. "You already married into it." Mariah's chest tightened. "That was supposed to be secret." Seung-Jun stepped closer. "It can stay secret." Mariah's voice cracked. "Then why are they finding me?" Seung-Jun's jaw tightened. "Because I couldn't stop myself from coming to you last night." A beat. Then Mariah whispered, "So this is your fault." Seung-Jun didn't deny it. "Yes," he said simply, "and I'll fix it." That evening, Mariah sat in Seung-Jun's penthouse, staring at her phone as notifications exploded. People were already sharing blurry photos of her near him, speculating, mocking, hunting. Mariah's hands trembled. Seung-Jun walked in, coat damp from rain, expression calm like he'd just returned from a normal meeting instead of a war. "What did you do?" Mariah asked, voice shaking. Seung-Jun set his phone down. "I bought the outlet." Mariah blinked. "You what?" "I bought the outlet," he repeated, like it was nothing. "The article will never publish." Mariah's stomach twisted. That's not normal." Seung-Jun stepped closer, gaze steady. "Neither is firing you because of your skin." Mariah's throat tightened. Seung-Jun's hand lifted, hovering near her cheek, not touching, asking without words. Mariah didn't pull away. His thumb brushed a tear she hadn't noticed had escaped. His voice dropped. "I'm sorry." Mariah's breath caught. "For what?" "For letting you feel alone in that room," he said. Mariah swallowed. "You weren't there." Seung-Jun's eyes darkened. "I should have been." Mariah's heart hammered. "You can't protect me from everything." Seung-Jun's gaze sharpened with something fierce. "Watch me." Mariah's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A single video loaded without her clicking. It showed her apartment building from across the street. A red circle highlighted her window. Then text appeared. "We know where you sleep." Mariah's blood turned cold. She looked up at Seung-Jun, voice breaking. "They're watching me." Seung-Jun's face turned lethal in one silent shift. He took the phone from her, watched the clip once, then handed it to Soo-jin without looking away from Mariah. "Find the sender," he said calmly. Soo-jin nodded and left. Mariah's breath shook. "Sung-jun." He stepped closer, hands cradling her face gently but firmly, making her look at him. "You're safe," he said. Mariah's eyes filled. "How can you be sure?" Sung-jun's voice dropped, rough. "Because nobody touches you, unless they want to stop breathing." Mariah flinched at the darkness. Then she whispered, "That scares me." Sung-jun's gaze softened. "Good." Mariah blinked. "Good?" "It means you understand the truth," he said quietly. "The world is not kind, but I am kind to you." Mariah's breath caught at the tenderness hidden inside the threat. She swallowed hard. "What if you change your mind after we—" Sung-jun's eyes narrowed. "After we what?" Mariah couldn't finish. Sung-jun leaned in, forehead nearly touching hers. "Say it," he murmured. "Tell me what you're afraid of." Mariah's voice cracked. "That you'll want me, and then regret me." Sung-jun went still. Then his voice turned low and deadly honest. "I don't regret what I want," he said. Mariah's pulse raced. Sung-jun's mouth hovered near hers, breath warm, restraint trembling. "If I kiss you," he whispered, "I won't be gentle about wanting you. I will be gentle with you, but not about you." Mariah's body went hot. Her mind screamed to step away. Her heart didn't move. Mariah lifted her hands to his coat, gripping it like she needed something solid to keep from falling apart. "Then kiss me," she whispered. Sung-jun's eyes flashed. Hunger, devotion, something almost desperate. He kissed her. Slow at first, like he was asking permission with every breath, then deeper, like he'd been starving. Mariah melted into him with a soft sound she tried to swallow. Her fingers curled into his shirt. Sung-jun's hand slid to her waist, holding her close, not letting her drift away. When they finally broke apart, Mariah's forehead rested against his chest, breath shaking. Sung-jun's voice was rough. "You're mine!" Mariah's throat tightened. "I don't want to be owned." Sung-jun's hand tightened at her waist, but his voice softened. "Then be chosen," he murmured. Over and over. A moment later, Soo-jin burst back in, eyes wide. "Chairman," she said, "we have a breach." Sung-jun's entire body shifted. "Where?" Soo-jin swallowed. "A van just stopped outside the building. No plates, 2 men. They're not ours." Mariah's blood went cold again. Sung-jun turned to her, voice low, calm, terrifying. "Stay behind me," he said. Mariah's breath caught. "Sung-jun." He didn't answer. He just moved, placing his body between her and the door like a living wall. The lights flickered once, then the power went out, and in the sudden darkness Mariah heard the unmistakable sound of someone trying to force the penthouse door. From the hall, a voice called softly, mocking. "Mrs. Han," it purred, "your husband doesn't get to keep you." Mariah's heart slammed. Sung-jun's voice came out like winter. "Touch her," he said, "and I will turn this city into your grave." The power stayed, out for exactly 6 seconds. In those 6 seconds, Sung-jun moved. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. He reached back, grabbed Mariah by the wrist, and pulled her flush against his chest as he guided her sideways behind a marble pillar. "Don't move," he murmured into her hair. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought he'd feel it. The light snapped back on. The penthouse door buckled inward. Men poured in, 3 of them, fast, coordinated, dressed like delivery workers but moving like predators who'd rehearsed this moment. Mariah's breath caught. Sung-jun stepped forward. The temperature in the room changed. One of the men raised his weapon. Sung-jun didn't hesitate. The next few seconds blurred into sound and motion, impact against bone, glass shattering, a body slamming into a wall. Seung-jun moved with terrifying precision, like violence was a language he spoke fluently but hated using. Mariah backed away, hand over her mouth, eyes burning. A gun clattered across the floor. The last man turned to run. Seung-jun caught him by the collar and slammed him face first onto the marble. "Who sent you?" Seung-jun said calmly. The man laughed through blood. "You already know." Seung-jun's grip tightened. Mariah found her voice. "Stop." Seung-jun froze. Not because the man mattered, because Mariah did. He released the attacker and stepped back, chest rising slowly, as if he were forcing himself to remember where he was. Sirens wailed in the distance, private security already inbound. Mariah stared at him. "You were going to kill him." Seung-jun met her gaze. "Yes," she swallowed, "because of me." His voice softened, dangerous and intimate. "Always because of you." Later that night, Mariah sat wrapped in a blanket on the couch while medics checked her pulse. She barely noticed. Her eyes stayed on Seung-jun, who stood by the window speaking quietly into his phone. His reflection fractured by city lights. "Trace the vehicle," he said. "I want names, tonight." He ended the call and turned. Mariah's stomach twisted at the sight of him like this, controlled, lethal, beautiful in a way that frightened her. He walked toward her slowly. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "No." "Shaking?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. Seung-jun crouched in front of her, hands resting on his knees like he was grounding himself on purpose. "You should be angry," she said suddenly. "I ruined your quiet life." His eyes lifted sharply. "I didn't have a quiet life." "You had control," she said. "I took that." Seung-jun studied her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "You gave me something else." She frowned. "What?" "A reason," he replied. The following morning, the world woke up hungry. News sites ran headlines about a sudden boardroom collapse. The greedy CEO's accounts were frozen. His resignation leaked before breakfast. His name vanished from the company website by noon. But the rumors didn't stop. They shifted. Mariah Sterling became the center of them. People speculated. People whispered. People searched her name. Some admired her. Others hated her. And one man, somewhere in the city, watched everything with interest. That afternoon, Mariah insisted on leaving the penthouse. "I can't hide forever," she said, pulling on her coat. Seung-jun stood in front of the door. "Yes," he said. Mariah blinked. "Yes?" "Yes, you can," he said calmly. "And you will." Her temper flared. "You don't get to lock me away." Seung-jun's jaw tightened. "I'm not locking you away. I'm protecting you." "From what?" she snapped. "Men like you?" The words landed hard. Seung-jun's eyes darkened, something wounded flashing beneath the control. "Careful," he said quietly. Mariah crossed her arms. "I won't live my life afraid of you." A beat. Then he stepped aside. "Fine," he said. "We go together." That evening, they attended a private charity event. Quiet, controlled, full of people who pretended they didn't know exactly who Seung-jun was. Mariah wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves without apology. Every head turned. Seung-jun felt it instantly, the attention, the way men's eyes lingered, the way women measured her with thin smiles. He placed a hand at the small of her back, not possessive enough to cause a scene, but enough to send a message. She belonged with him. A man approached, tall, confident, American accent. "Mariah Sterling," he said warmly. "I've read your work. Shame what happened." Mariah smiled politely. "Thank you." "I'm David," the man continued. "I run a consulting firm in New York. If you're ever interested—" Seung-jun's hand tightened. David noticed it and smiled wider, clearly enjoying the tension. "Didn't realize you were spoken for," David said lightly. Mariah opened her mouth. Seung-jun spoke first. "She is," he said. Mariah stiffened. David chuckled. "Lucky man." Sung-jun's voice dropped. Very. Later that night in the car, Mariah finally exploded. "You embarrassed me," she said. Sung-jun kept his eyes on the road. "He was testing me. He was offering me a job," she snapped. Sung-jun's jaw flexed. "In another country." "So?" she shot back. "Am I not allowed to leave you?" The question hit harder than she intended. Sung-jun slowed the car, pulled over, turned to face her fully. "You don't leave," he said quietly. "Not like that." Mariah's breath caught. "You don't own me." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm asking you not to." The vulnerability startled her more than anger would have. A few days later, the threats escalated. A note slipped under the penthouse door. A photo of Mariah exiting the charity event. A message written beneath it. "You look pretty when you forget who protects you." Mariah's hands trembled as she read it. Sung-jun's face went cold. "This ends now," he said. That night, Mariah woke to silence. Too quiet. She sat up, heart racing. Sung-jun's side of the bed was empty. She wrapped the sheet around herself and stepped into the hallway. His voice drifted from the balcony, low, dangerous. "You don't get to touch her," he said, "not even with words." Mariah froze. "I don't care what it costs," Sung-jun continued. "I will erase you." She realized then, fully, terrifyingly, that loving him meant standing beside a storm that never apologized. Later, when he returned to the bedroom, she pretended to sleep. He lay beside her without touching her, but his hand hovered near her waist like he was afraid she'd disappear. The next morning, she was gone. She left a note. "I need to know I'm choosing you, not hiding behind you." Sung-jun read it once. Then his world narrowed to a single purpose. Find her. Not to cage her, but to prove, once and for all, that love didn't have to be fear. Sung-jun read the note 3 times before his face changed. Not anger, not disappointment. Something worse. Quiet fear, dressed in control. Soo-jin stood by the door, already holding a tablet. "Chairman, the cameras show she left through the service elevator at 5:12 a.m. She wore a hoodie and a cap. She moved like she didn't want to be seen." Sung-jun folded the note once, carefully, like it mattered enough to keep intact. "She didn't take a suitcase," he said. Soo-jin's throat bobbed. "No, just her phone." Sung-jun's eyes sharpened. "She thinks she can prove something alone." Soo-jin hesitated. "She's trying to protect her dignity." Sung-jun didn't blink. "She's trying to protect me from herself." He stepped forward, grabbing his coat without rushing, but the air around him was suddenly razor thin. "Find her," he said. Soo-jin nodded quickly. "We're all ready." Sung-jun's gaze cut to her, cold. "Not later, not soon, now." A beat. Then his voice softened by 1 degree, and it was somehow more terrifying. "And no one calls her. No one scares her back into hiding. We locate her quietly. We bring her home." Home. He'd never used that word for anyone. Soo-jin swallowed and turned to the team. "All units, we trace her phone, transit cards, street cams. No sirens, no visible pursuit." Sung-jun walked toward the elevator, phone already in his hand. He paused once, staring at the note again. "I need to know I'm choosing you, not hiding behind you." His jaw tightened. "You're choosing me," he murmured under his breath. "You just don't know you already did." The elevator doors closed. By mid-morning, Seoul felt too wide. Mariah moved. Through it, like a ghost, hood pulled low, cap shadowing her face, her heart pounding in her throat as she walked into a small cafe in a quiet neighborhood near the river. The barista greeted her brightly. Mariah forced a smile and ordered a tea she didn't even want. She chose the corner seat near the window and stared at her hands until the shaking faded. She'd told herself she wasn't running from Sung-jun. She was running toward herself. She needed to breathe without security watching her door. She needed to remember what it felt like to exist without being a headline, a target, a weakness in someone else's war. But the moment she sat down, the cafe's warmth didn't soothe her. It only made her realize how exhausted she was. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mariah's stomach dropped. She didn't answer. Another buzz. A text this time. "You left his cage. Smart girl." Mariah's blood ran cold. Her fingers tightened around her cup so hard she nearly spilled it. She stood quickly, heart hammering, and walked out into the street like she wasn't terrified. The city kept moving, cars, pedestrians, laughter, life, and under it, danger, silent, patient. A few blocks later, she turned into a side street that should have been safe. The air changed. She felt it the way she'd felt it that day in the boardroom, like the world had decided to become cruel. Two men stepped out from behind a parked van, not rushed, not loud, just there. One smiled, as if they were old friends. "Mariah Sterling," he said softly. "Mrs. Han." Mariah's throat tightened. Her feet tried to move. But the second man lifted a phone and showed her the screen. A live feed. The penthouse hallway. Her old apartment building. Someone had found the place she'd lived before Seung-jun. The message underneath the feed was simple. "One move and we make a mess." Mariah's lungs forgot how to work. The smiling man leaned in. "You didn't. Want to hide behind him, right? Good. Come with us quietly." Mariah's voice came out thin. "If you touch anyone," he chuckled gently, "we're not here for them. We're here for your husband." Mariah's eyes stung. "I'm not his weakness," she whispered, more to herself than to them. The man's smile widened. "You're his heart, and hearts are easy to squeeze." A hand closed around her elbow, not violent, just controlling. Mariah's body went cold, and then the van door slid open. Later that day, Seung-jun stood in a glass-walled command room in his penthouse. City spread beneath him like a map of pressure points. Screens glowed with footage, traffic cams, subway entries, sidewalk angles. Soo-jin's voice stayed steady, but her eyes were tense. Her phone pinged near the river 30 minutes ago, then it went dark. Seung-jun didn't blink. "Not dead, off." A technician spoke quickly. "We have a van sighting matching the area. No plates. It turned toward the industrial side. South Road." Seung-jun's jaw flexed once. Soo-jin swallowed. "Chairman, it's a trap." Seung-jun's voice was calm. "Everything is a trap." He picked up his phone, a number he hadn't used in a long time. He pressed call. When someone answered, he spoke without greeting. "Shut the south docks," he said. "Every gate, every back road. Nothing moves without my approval." A pause. Then, "Yes, now." He ended the call and looked at Soo-jin. "Take the quiet route," he said. "No lights, no sirens. She will already be afraid." Soo-jin nodded, then hesitated. "Chairman?" Seung-jun's gaze sharpened. "Speak." "If they hurt her," Soo-jin started, then stopped. Seung-jun's voice lowered. "They won't." He didn't say it like hope. He said it like law. A few hours later, Mariah sat in a dim room that smelled like old wood and river air. Her wrists weren't tied. That was worse. It meant the men believed she wouldn't run, or believed she couldn't. A single lamp cast soft light, making the room feel almost gentle if you ignored the armed guard by the door. Mariah's throat burned as she forced herself to breathe slowly. She'd been brave her whole life. But this was different. This was being brave inside someone else's nightmare. The door opened. A man stepped in. Korean, mid-30s, expensive suit, cold eyes. He looked polished enough to belong in a boardroom. He smiled like he enjoyed the contrast. "Mrs. Han," he said warmly, "you're prettier up close." Mariah's stomach turned. "What do you want?" she asked. The man sat across from her and rested his hands on the table. "Your husband," he said lightly, "and not just his money, his pride." Mariah held his gaze, refusing to flinch. "If you think he'll negotiate—" "Oh, he'll come," the man interrupted. "He's already on his way." Mariah's heart stuttered. She hated the relief that rushed in, hated it, because relief meant attachment, and attachment meant fear. The man studied her face as if reading every emotion. "You're trying to be strong," he said softly. "That's cute." Mariah's eyes flashed. "Don't talk to me like that." He chuckled. "You left him today. That was the most dangerous thing you could have done. Now he's going to arrive furious, and you're going to watch what kind of man you married." Mariah's breath shook. "He's not a monster." The man tilted his head. "Not with you. That's why you're useful." Mariah swallowed. "What's your name?" The man smiled, amused by her courage. "Call me Director Kim. You don't need more than that." Mariah's jaw tightened. "You're not government." Director Kim leaned in slightly. "No, I'm the shadow government calls when they want something erased without fingerprints." Mariah's blood ran cold. "And your husband?" he continued. "He's the man shadows fear." Mariah forced herself to steady her voice. "Then you're making a mistake." Director Kim's smile widened. "Maybe, but I like mistakes that bleed money." A few minutes later, Mariah's phone buzzed on the table. Director Kim slid it toward her with a polite gesture. "Answer," he said. The screen showed a call from a blocked number. Mariah's fingers trembled as she pressed it. Silence. Then Seung-jun's voice, low, controlled, too quiet. "Mariah." Her chest cracked open at the sound of him. "I'm here," she whispered. A beat. Then he asked, "Are you hurt?" "No," she said quickly. "I'm okay." Another beat. Then Seung-jun's voice changed, softer, just for her. "I'm sorry," he murmured. Mariah's throat tightened. "For what?" "For letting you think you had to prove anything," he said. Mariah's eyes burned. "I didn't want to be your weakness." "You're not," he said, firm now. "You're my wife. That's not weakness, that's chosen." Director Kim leaned toward the phone, smiling. "Chairman Han," he purred. "Come alone. If you bring an army, the city hears about your little secret marriage. Your investors love romance scandals." Mariah's stomach dropped. Seung-jun's voice stayed calm. "Release her." Director Kim laughed softly. "Not yet. I want to see if you can kneel." Mariah's breath caught. Seung-jun's voice turned lethal. "I don't kneel." Director Kim's tone sweetened. "Then watch her suffer." Mariah's heart slammed. "Seung-jun," she whispered, panic rising. "Don't—" Seung-jun cut in, voice low and intimate. "Listen to me," he said. "No matter what you hear, you trust me." Mariah's breath shook. "I don't know how." "You do," he said. "You already did when you left a note instead of disappearing forever." Mariah's eyes widened. He knew her too well. Director Kim ended the call with a satisfied smile. "He's coming," he said. "Good." Mariah swallowed. "If you hurt him—" Director Kim leaned back. "I won't hurt him. I'll humiliate him. That's cleaner." Mariah's voice turned fierce. "You don't know him." Director Kim's smile sharpened. "You don't either. Not fully." Later that evening, rain swept across the docks, making the river look like black glass. A single car rolled in. No convoy, no lights. Just one vehicle cutting through the night like a blade. Seung-jun stepped out, coat collar up, expression calm. Too calm. Director Kim watched from the window, amused. "Open the door," he told his men. The door swung wide. Seung-jun walked inside like the building belonged to him. Mariah's breath caught when she saw him. He didn't look wild. He looked controlled, like he'd wrapped his rage in chains. His eyes found her instantly. For one heartbeat, his gaze softened. Then it hardened again, because he saw the fear in her posture, the way her hands trembled even though she was trying to hide it. He stopped at the table. "Untouched," he said quietly. Not a question, a demand. Director Kim smiled. "For now." Seung-jun's jaw tightened by a millimeter. "Release her." Director Kim gestured lazily. "Sit." Seung-jun didn't move. Director Kim sighed as if disappointed. "You're not fun." He snapped his fingers. A guard behind Mariah lifted a weapon, not pointed at her head, but close enough to make the message clear. Mariah's breath turned sharp. Seung-jun's gaze didn't flicker. He looked at Mariah and spoke softly. "Breathe." Mariah obeyed. In, out. Director Kim's smile faded slightly, irritated by their quiet intimacy. "You love her," Director Kim said. Seung-jun didn't answer. Director Kim leaned forward. "Say it." Seung-jun's eyes darkened. "I don't perform." Director Kim chuckled. "Then let's make it personal." He slid a folder across the table. Seung-jun didn't touch it. Director Kim tapped the folder. "That CEO who fired her? He was my friend. I helped him. He wanted to remind her she was lucky to be in that building." Mariah's stomach twisted. Director Kim smiled at her. "You should have stayed quiet. People like you survive when you accept your place." Seung-jun's face went still. Mariah felt the shift in the air like the room had tilted toward disaster. Seung-jun spoke calmly. "Apologize." Director Kim laughed. "To her?" Seung-jun's gaze stayed cold. "Now." Director Kim leaned back, amused. "I don't think so." Mariah whispered, "Seung-jun, don't..." Seung-jun didn't look away from Director Kim, but he answered her anyway, voice low enough to feel like a hand on her cheek. "I won't lose myself," he murmured. "Not in front of you." Director Kim's smile tightened. "Then you will lose her." He snapped again. The lights flickered. Mariah's heart slammed. Seung-jun moved. It happened fast, too fast for fear to keep up. He surged forward, caught the guard's wrist, twisted, disarmed him in a single motion. The weapon clattered. Another guard lunged. Seung-jun pivoted, striking with brutal precision. The man folded. Director Kim stood abruptly, shock flashing. Seung-jun grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the table hard enough to shake the lamp. Mariah gasped. Seung-jun's voice was ice. "You don't speak to her." Director Kim coughed, then smiled through it. "There he is." Seung-jun tightened his grip. Mariah found her voice. "Seung-jun!" He froze again. Not because Director Kim mattered, because Mariah did. Seung-jun's chest rose and fell slowly as he forced control back into his hands. Then the door burst open. Soo-jin's team flooded in, silent, coordinated, efficient. Director Kim's men tried to run. They didn't get far. Within seconds, the room was secured. Mariah stood trembling, unsure whether to move, speak, breathe. Seung-jun turned to her, and for the first time since the morning, he looked afraid, not of the men, of her leaving again. He stepped toward her slowly, hands open at his sides like he was trying to show her he wasn't a cage. He was a choice. Mariah's eyes filled. "I didn't mean for this." Seung-jun stopped a foot away. "I know," he said softly. "You were trying to be brave." Mariah's voice cracked. "I didn't want to need you." Seung-jun's gaze softened. "You don't need me," he murmured. "You want me." Mariah blinked. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. Seung-jun lifted his hand, hovering near her face, asking. Mariah nodded once. He cupped her cheek gently, thumb brushing away a tear like it offended him that anyone had made her cry. "I searched for you," he said quietly. Mariah swallowed. "I didn't go far." "You went far enough," he replied, "because my world without you is empty." Mariah's breath shook. Seung-jun pulled her into his chest carefully, like she was something precious he didn't trust the world to hold. Mariah clung to him, her hands gripping his coat as if letting go would make everything collapse again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was scared." Seung-jun's voice turned rough. "I was terrified." Mariah blinked against his chest. "You? Terrified?" Seung-jun pressed a kiss to her hair, soft, almost reverent. "Yes," he murmured, "because you're the only person who can make me human." Mariah's chest ached. That's too much weight. Seung-jun leaned back just enough to look at her. His eyes were dark but gentle. Then let me carry it, he said, and you carry me when I forget how to be gentle. Mariah's lips trembled. I don't want blood on my hands. Seung-jun's thumb brushed her cheek again. Then keep me clean, he whispered. Stay. Mariah nodded slowly. I'll stay. Seung-jun's exhale shook, like those words hit him harder than any bullet ever could. Later that night, in the SUV, Mariah sat wrapped in Seung-jun's coat, her head resting on his shoulder. He held her with one arm, the other hand on his phone as he gave quiet instructions. No media leaks, he said. Not yet. A pause. Yes, the CEO too. He's done. Mariah's voice came out small. What happens to Director Kim? Seung-jun looked down at her. His eyes softened before he answered. He will never reach you again, he said simply. Mariah swallowed. Promise? Seung-jun's voice dropped. On my life. Mariah's breath shook. Don't say that. Seung-jun's gaze held hers. Then don't ever disappear again, he murmured, because I don't know what I become when I can't find you. Mariah's eyes stung again. That scares me. Seung-jun pressed a kiss to her forehead. It scares me too. That night, back in the penthouse, Seung-jun didn't leave her alone for even a second. He guided her into the bedroom, sat her on the edge of the bed, and knelt in front of her like he wasn't a man feared by half the city. His hands rested on her knees, gently, grounding her. Tell me what you need, he said softly. Mariah stared at him, voice trembling. I need you to stop acting like I have to earn your love. Seung-jun's eyes darkened with something tender. You don't, he whispered. Mariah swallowed. And I need you to stop making everything a war. Seung-jun nodded slowly. Then help me, he murmured. Teach me peace. Mariah's lips trembled. I don't know how. Seung-jun leaned forward until his forehead touched hers. His voice was barely a breath. Just stay close. Mariah closed her eyes. She leaned into him. Seung-jun kissed her. Slow, careful, sweet in a way that made her chest ache more than heat ever could. Mariah's fingers slid into his hair, holding him there like she didn't want the moment to end. When the kiss deepened, it wasn't explicit. It was emotional, full of everything they'd survived and everything they still feared. Seung-jun's hands held her as if she mattered more than his power. Mariah whispered, Promise you won't change your mind tomorrow. Seung-jun's voice turned rough. I will wake up and choose you again, he said, and the next day, and every day after. A little later, the lights in the city softened into midnight. Mariah lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Seung-jun's hand rested at her waist, protective but gentle. You're still awake, he murmured. Mariah swallowed. I'm scared the moment I relax, something will happen again. Seung-jun's voice was quiet. Then we build something stronger than fear, he said. Mariah's eyes stung. How? Seung-jun kissed her temple. By the end of this week, he murmured, everyone will know you're mine, because you chose me. Mariah's heart stuttered. Publicly? Seung-jun's gaze darkened. Yes. Mariah's breath caught. That's dangerous. Seung-jun's voice softened. I know, he said, but hiding you makes you a rumor. Claiming you makes you untouchable. Mariah's throat tightened. And what if the world attacks harder? Seung-jun's eyes held hers, steady. Then I don't face it alone, he said, and you don't run alone. Mariah stared at him, the softness of the moment wrapping around the terror like a blanket. She nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. Together. Seung-jun's arms tightened around her as if that single word fed something starving. Inside him, later that night, Soo-jin knocked softly and stepped in without fully entering, respectful of the quiet. Chairman, she said gently, we intercepted something. Seung-jun's eyes sharpened. Soo-jin held up a phone, a message from an unknown number. 2 words, wedding, soon. Mariah's stomach dropped. Seung-jun's face went still. Mariah whispered, "What does that mean?" Seung-jun's voice turned cold. "It means someone heard the word wife and decided to turn it into a spectacle." Mariah's breath turned shaky. "They'll try to hurt me again." Seung-jun looked down at her, and the softness returned. Quiet, fierce, unwavering. "No," he said. "They'll try." Mariah's eyes burned. "And if they do?" Seung-jun leaned in, kissed her forehead, and spoke like a vow. "Then I will end this world they keep using to reach you," he murmured, "and I will build you a safer one." Mariah's throat tightened. "That's impossible." Seung-jun's eyes held hers. "So was me loving anyone," he said softly. "Until you." Mariah stared at him like the words had physically touched her. For a second, she forgot the docs, the threats, the men who wanted to turn her life into leverage. All she could see was Seung-jun's face, hard lines softened by something rare, something almost innocent. Love. Not the kind people performed online, not the kind that showed up when it was convenient. This was the kind that stayed even when it was dangerous. Mariah's throat tightened. "You keep saying things that sound like a promise," she whispered. Seung-jun's gaze didn't move. "Because they are." Soo-jin stood respectfully near the door, eyes lowered, but her posture screamed urgency. "Chairman," she said softly, "we need to move. If they sent that message, they're watching." Seung-jun nodded once without looking away from Mariah, as if she was the only thing that anchored him to the world. He slid out of bed, pulled on a dark shirt, and then turned back to her. His hand reached for hers, gentle, patient. Mariah hesitated, not because she didn't want him, because wanting him felt like admitting how scared she'd been without him. Seung-jun didn't rush her. He simply held his hand there, steady, offering, not taking. Mariah placed her hand in his. The moment their fingers touched, something in her chest loosened. "Come," he said quietly. And the way he said it wasn't command. It was home. A little later, she sat at the kitchen island wrapped in one of his sweaters, the sleeves too long, warmth lingering in the fabric like it remembered him. Seung-jun moved around the kitchen without needing instructions, making tea the way she liked it, not too sweet, just enough to soften the bitterness. Mariah watched him, her heart doing small, tender things she didn't know how to control. Soo-jin spoke quietly with the security team in the next room. Names floated through the air like smoke. Director Kim, the greedy CEO, offshore accounts, a rival syndicate. Mariah didn't want to hear it. Not today. Seung-jun set the tea in front of her and sat across from her. "Drink," he said softly. Mariah curled her fingers around the cup. "You're acting like nothing happened." Seung-jun's eyes held hers. "I'm acting like you're here." Mariah's breath caught. "And what if I disappear again?" Seung-jun's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed gentle. "Don't." Mariah's eyes stung. That wasn't an answer. Seung-jun reached across the counter and covered her hand with his, thumb brushing the side of her finger like he was grounding himself through touch. "If you leave again," he said quietly, "I will find you." Mariah swallowed. "And when I find you," he continued, "I won't punish you. I won't cage you. I will just hold you until you believe you're allowed to be loved without proving anything." The sweetness of it made her chest ache. Mariah blinked hard. "You say that like it's simple." Seung-jun's mouth tightened. "It's not simple. It's just the only thing I know is true." A beat passed. Mariah's voice dropped. "Do you ever regret marrying me?" Seung-jun went still. The room felt suddenly too quiet. Mariah hated herself for asking, but the fear had lived in her for too long to stay silent. Seung-jun leaned forward slightly. "No?" Mariah searched his face. "Not even when the world uses me against you?" Sungjoon's eyes darkened, especially then. Mariah's breath caught. That makes no sense. Sungjoon's voice softened. It makes perfect sense. He lifted her hand gently, pressed a kiss to her knuckles, slow, reverent, like he was honoring the part of her that still trembled. They think you're my weakness, he said. Mariah's lips parted. Sungjoon looked up at her. But you are the only reason I don't become someone they can't survive. Mariah's eyes burned. That's too much. Sungjoon's gaze stayed steady. It's the truth. Later that afternoon, Sungjoon stood in his private office, suit jacket on, cufflinks fastened, expression composed. Mariah lingered in the doorway, unsure whether she belonged inside this part of his life. Sungjoon looked up. Come here. Mariah walked in slowly. He rose and moved toward her. Today, he said, voice calm, we end this. Mariah's stomach tightened. How? Sungjoon's eyes softened. By refusing to hide you. Mariah's pulse jumped. Sungjoon! He reached for her hands. Listen. Mariah went still. I have spent my entire life controlling what people see, he said quietly. Power, respect, fear. Mariah swallowed, watching his mouth like she was afraid she'd miss something important. And then you happened, he continued, and suddenly control felt empty. Mariah's throat tightened. Sungjoon's voice dropped. I don't want you to be a rumor. I don't want you to be a secret someone can threaten me with. Mariah's eyes stung. It will make the attacks worse. Sungjoon brushed his thumb over her wrist, gentle where the fear still lived. Maybe. Mariah's breath shook. So why do it? Sungjoon looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. Because I want to give you something you've never been offered, he said softly. Mariah whispered. What? Sungjoon's gaze held hers. A love that doesn't ask you to shrink. Mariah's chest cracked open. A long silence stretched between them. Then she whispered, Okay. Sungjoon's exhale was shaky. Barely, but she felt it. He leaned in, pressed his forehead to hers for a brief moment, as if he needed the contact to steady his blood. Thank you, he murmured. Mariah blinked. For what? For trusting me, he said, even when it scares you. That evening, Seoul glittered like a city trying to pretend it wasn't dangerous. A private gala filled a hotel ballroom with wealth and perfume and controlled smiles. This wasn't a charity event. This was where the powerful came to measure each other. Mariah stepped out of the car beside Sungjoon and felt the world pause. Not because she was famous, because he was, and because he was holding her hand. Cameras flashed instantly, hungry. Mariah's breath caught. Sungjoon turned slightly, positioning his body between her and the harshest angles, shielding without hiding. He leaned toward her. Breathe. Mariah forced herself to inhale. Inside, the crowd parted as if the room itself respected him. Men bowed their heads. Women smiled too brightly. Everyone watched. Mariah's skin warmed under the attention. The whispers began immediately. Who is she? Why is he with her? Is she? Sungjoon didn't flinch. He guided her to the center of the room with calm inevitability. A man approached, older, silver-haired, eyes sharp, a board member, one of the ones who had approved her firing. His smile was strained. Chairman Han, we weren't aware you were attending. Sungjoon's expression stayed polite. You weren't meant to be aware. The man's gaze flicked to Mariah. And this is... Mariah felt the old sting rising, the reflex to make herself smaller, safer, easier to accept. Sungjoon's hand tightened gently around hers. Then he spoke clearly, for the room. This is my wife. The words landed like thunder in a polished room. Silence hit. A wave of shock moved through the crowd like a ripple through water. Mariah's heart slammed so hard it nearly hurt. The board member's smile froze. Your wife. Sungjoon's eyes stayed cold. Yes. The man's mouth opened, then closed, trying to recover. We congratulate you. Seung-jun's voice was calm. You will do more than congratulate. The man blinked. Chairman? Seung-jun's gaze sharpened. You will apologize. The board member's eyes widened. Mariah's breath caught. Seung-jun. He didn't look at her. He looked at the man who had watched her be humiliated and stayed silent. You approved her termination, Seung-jun said. You permitted racism to disguise itself as brand alignment. The room grew colder. The board member's face turned pale. Chairman, this is, Seung-jun cut him off quietly. This is the consequence. Cameras flashed again, capturing every breath. Mariah's hands trembled. Seung-jun turned his head slightly, voice lowering, still audible enough for those close to hear. Apologize to my wife, he said. The board member's pride fought it. Then Seung-jun's gaze shifted. Not louder, not more dramatic, just colder. The man's pride broke. He turned to Mariah, stiff as stone. Mrs. Han, I apologize. Mariah's throat tightened. The apology wasn't warm, but it was public, and public meant power. Seung-jun didn't stop there. He faced the room, voice calm, measured. This woman gave her excellence to people who treated her like decoration, he said. Mariah's eyes burned. She was fired because they thought nobody would defend her, Seung-jun continued. They were wrong. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Some stared. Mariah felt her heart swelling, not with vanity, but with something she'd never had. Being seen, being claimed, being protected without being erased. Seung-jun looked down at her briefly, eyes softening. You never had to earn your place, he murmured, just for her. You always belonged beside me. Mariah swallowed hard, tears pressing. Someone in the crowd moved. Director Kim's voice wasn't there, but the threat of him was, and Seung-jun knew it. His security team tightened subtly, invisible to most, obvious to anyone trained to see. Later that night, as the gala continued, a waiter drifted too close. Mariah felt it first. The wrong kind of attention, the wrong kind of stillness. Seung-jun felt it a second later. His hand slid to her waist gently. Don't turn, he murmured. Mariah's breath caught. Why? Seung-jun's voice remained calm. Just don't. The waiter's tray tilted slightly, too controlled. Mariah's heart slammed. A tiny device glinted beneath the napkin. A listening bug? Or something worse? Seung-jun moved smoothly, guiding Mariah toward the dance floor as if nothing was wrong. He pulled her into a slow dance, his palm warm on her back. To the world, it looked romantic. To Mariah, it felt like being sheltered inside a storm. Seung-jun leaned in, lips near her ear. Stay with me, Mariah whispered. I am. Seung-jun's jaw flexed. Good. His security team approached the waiter silently, hands gentle but decisive. The waiter's eyes widened. He tried to step back. He didn't get far. The music continued. The room kept smiling. But Seung-jun's body stayed tense, protective. Mariah pressed her cheek lightly against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, steady, controlled, alive. I'm sorry, she whispered. Seung-jun's voice softened. Stop apologizing for existing. Mariah's eyes stung. It's a habit. Seung-jun's arms tightened around her in a way that was both possessive and tender. Then we break it, he murmured. The next day, headlines exploded. Korean chairman reveals secret wife board member, forced to apologize, racism scandal rocks, corporate giant. Mariah woke to her phone, buzzing with messages from people who had never cared about her until she belonged to power. She stared at the screen, stomach tight. Seung-jun walked in carrying breakfast. He set a plate down in front of her, toast, fruit, tea, normal things, as if their lives weren't on fire. Mariah looked up. People are calling me. Seung-jun sat beside her. Don't answer. Mariah frowned. You can't control everything. Seung-jun's gaze softened. No. He reached for her hand. But I can control who gets access to you. Mariah swallowed. I don't want to become a trophy. Seung-jun's voice went low. Then don't. Mariah blinked. Seung-jun turned his body toward her fully. Be exactly who you are, he said. The woman who didn't beg in a boardroom. The woman who left me a note instead of disappearing. The woman who still tries to stand alone even when she's shaking. Mariah's eyes filled again. Seung-jun's thumb brushed her fingers. That woman isn't a trophy. He leaned closer. She's my equal. Mariah's breath shook. Then, finally, she let herself lean into him. Seung-jun wrapped an arm around her, resting his chin lightly on the top of her head. For a moment it felt quiet, like maybe they could have peace. But peace, in Seung-jun's world, never arrived unchallenged. That afternoon, Soo-jin entered with her tablet, expression tight. Chairman, she said, we confirmed it. Director Kim isn't acting alone. Seung-jun's gaze sharpened. Who? Soo-jin hesitated. Your half-brother. Mariah's stomach dropped. Seung-jun went very still. Mariah whispered, You have a brother? Seung-jun's voice was flat. A man who shares blood, not loyalty. Soo-jin tapped the tablet and turned it to them. A photo. A man with the same sharp bone structure as Seung-jun, same cold eyes, but a smile that looked like it enjoyed cruelty. Name. Han Jae-min. Soo-jin swallowed. He's been feeding Director Kim information. He wants control of your empire. Mariah's chest tightened. And he thinks I'm leverage. Seung-jun's gaze darkened. He thinks you're my weakness. Mariah whispered, What will you do? Seung-jun looked at her, and the answer in his eyes was frightening, but his voice stayed gentle. I will end it, he said, and then I will give you the life you deserve. That night, Seung-jun didn't leave Mariah's side, not even in the bathroom hallway, not even when she brushed her teeth. Mariah finally turned to him, exasperated. Are you going to watch me breathe too? Seung-jun's mouth twitched slightly, almost a smile. Yes, he said. Mariah stared. Seung-jun stepped closer, palms resting lightly on her hips, gaze softened by something warm. You're not a burden, he murmured. Stop treating yourself like one. Mariah's throat tightened. I'm scared. Seung-jun leaned in, kissing her forehead. So am I. Mariah blinked. You keep saying that. Seung-jun's voice was low. Because you need to hear it. I'm not fearless. I'm just willing. Mariah whispered, Willing to do what? Seung-jun's gaze held hers. To choose you even if it costs me everything else. A few days later, Seung-jun set a trap. Not for Director Kim, for Han Jae-min. A meeting was scheduled at a private rooftop restaurant. Exclusive, quiet, the kind of place where money bought silence. Mariah didn't want to go, but Seung-jun insisted gently. I need you with me. Mariah's stomach twisted. Why? Seung-jun's voice softened. Because he needs to see you aren't hidden anymore. Mariah swallowed. And if it becomes dangerous? Seung-jun's gaze turned firm. Then I protect you. Mariah exhaled shakily. You keep saying that. Seung-jun's thumb brushed her knuckles. Because I mean it. The rooftop was cold with wind, city lights glittering below like a field of stars. Han Jae-min arrived smiling. He looked at Seung-jun like they were brothers. He looked at Mariah like she was an object. Well, Jae-min said softly, so the rumors are true. Seung-jun's voice stayed calm. Yes. Jae-min's smile widened. You married her. Mariah's chest tightened at the way he said her, like she was a thing. Seung-jun's gaze hardened. Speak carefully. Jae-min chuckled. You always were dramatic. I'm just surprised you'd risk your image for a... Seung-jun stood so fast the chair scraped. The sound cut through the wind like a warning. Mariah's heart slammed. Seung-jun leaned forward slightly, eyes cold enough to make the air feel sharp. "Finish that sentence," he said quietly. Jaemin's smile faltered. Mariah's throat tightened. Jaemin recovered quickly, lifting his hands. "I'm joking." Seung-jun's voice stayed calm, but the calm was lethal. "I don't joke about my wife." Jaemin's eyes shifted, calculating. Then he smiled again, thin, sharp. "Your wife? Interesting." He looked at Mariah. "Do you know what kind of man you married?" Mariah's pulse jumped. "Yes." Jaemin chuckled. "Then you know he can't love you the way you think." Seung-jun's jaw tightened. Mariah's voice turned steady. "Don't talk like you know him better than I do." Jaemin leaned back, amused. "Oh, I know him." He turned to Seung-jun. "You're making yourself vulnerable. A woman like her will leave when she sees what you really are." Mariah's stomach dropped. Seung-jun's gaze didn't move from Jaemin's face. "Try it." Jaemin smiled slowly. "I already did." A beat. Mariah's phone buzzed in her purse. Her blood ran cold. Seung-jun's eyes flicked to her bag. Sharp. Mariah pulled the phone out. A video, a live feed. Her mother's house back home. A figure in the shadows outside the gate. Mariah's breath hitched. Jaemin's voice was calm. "I told you. Vulnerable." Mariah's hands shook. Seung-jun's face turned terrifyingly still. Jaemin smiled. "Give me control of the company, publicly, or the people you love become messy." Mariah's chest tightened. Seung-jun didn't look at Jaemin. He looked at Mariah. His voice softened to something almost intimate. "Look at me," he said. Mariah's eyes snapped to his. Seung-jun's gaze held hers with calm certainty. "I will handle this," he murmured. Mariah's voice cracked. "Seung-jun!" He cupped her cheek gently, thumb brushing away a tear before it could fall. "You trust me," he said softly. "Yes?" Mariah trembled. Then she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. Seung-jun's jaw tightened with something like gratitude. He turned back to Jaemin, and the softness vanished. "You made 2 mistakes," Seung-jun said calmly. Jaemin lifted a brow. "Oh?" Seung-jun's voice remained steady. "First, you threatened innocent people. Second," he stepped forward slightly, eyes cold, "you assumed I would negotiate." Jaemin's smile faltered. Seung-jun lifted his phone and tapped the screen. Soo-jin's voice came through calmly. "Chairman, target located. The man outside her family gate has been detained. No harm done." Mariah's knees nearly buckled with relief. Jaemin's face changed. Seung-jun's voice stayed calm, almost disappointed. "You thought I wouldn't already be protecting them." Jaemin's jaw clenched. "You," Seung-jun continued, "and while you were busy trying to scare my wife..." He tapped again. A screen on the rooftop wall flickered on, pre-arranged. It displayed documents, photos, bank transfers, audio recordings, evidence. Jaemin's eyes widened. Seung-jun's voice was soft as a knife. "I collected everything." Jaemin's smile broke. "You wouldn't expose your own blood." Seung-jun's gaze stayed, cold. "You stopped being family the moment you used her." Mariah's breath shook. Jaemin's face tightened with panic and rage. "You think you can just..." Seung-jun cut him off, voice calm. "I can." He leaned in slightly. "You're finished." Jaemin's eyes flared. "And her, when this gets ugly, she'll run." Seung-jun turned his head just enough to look at Mariah. His eyes softened again. "She already ran," he said quietly, "and she came back." Mariah's throat tightened. Seung-jun's voice warmed, just for her, even as he stood in the middle of war. "She chose me," he murmured, "and I will spend the rest of my life proving she made the right choice." Jaemin lunged suddenly, anger snapping his control. Security moved instantly. He was restrained before he could get close. Jaemin shouted, "You'll regret this!" Seung-jun didn't flinch. "You're right," he said calmly. You will." A week later, the city felt different, not safer, but clearer. Jamin was gone from the board, gone from the empire. His name erased, his assets frozen, his allies scattered like scared birds. Director Kim vanished into the kind of prison that didn't make headlines. The greedy CEO lost everything: his house, his status, his loud, smug confidence, and the part that made Mariah's chest ease the most: his voice. He could no longer speak about her as if she was beneath him. Now he wasn't even above ground in the same way. He was irrelevant. Mariah sat on Sungjun's balcony one quiet evening, tea in her hands, hair loose, city humming below. Sungjun stepped behind her and draped a blanket over her shoulders. She leaned back into him automatically now, the way a person leans into safety. "You're cold," he murmured. Mariah exhaled softly. "I'm just tired." Sungjun's arms wrapped around her from behind, careful and warm. "Then rest," he said. Mariah turned her head, slightly. "Do you ever get tired of protecting me?" Sungjun pressed a kiss to her temple. "Never." Mariah's throat tightened. "What if I want to protect you, too?" Sungjun's breath paused. He looked down at her, eyes softer than the night. "You already do," he murmured. Mariah frowned. "How?" Sungjun's hand slid to her stomach gently, not possessive, not demanding, just a touch full of something tender. "Because you make me want to stay alive," he said quietly. Mariah swallowed, heart aching. "That's too heavy." Sungjun's voice softened. "Then we make it light." Mariah blinked. "How?" Sungjun stepped around her and knelt in front of her chair. A man feared by the city, kneeling like it was natural. Mariah's breath caught. Sungjun took her hands in his, gaze steady. "I don't want a secret life anymore," he said. "Not with you." Mariah's eyes widened. "Sungjun." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. Not huge, not flashy, elegant, timeless. A promise you could live inside. Mariah's mouth parted. Sungjun's voice shook slightly, like he wasn't used to asking for anything. "We're already married on paper," he said, "but I want to marry you in a way the world can't threaten." Mariah's eyes filled. Sungjun swallowed hard. "I want you to stand beside me because you want to, not because you need shelter." Mariah whispered, "I do want to." Sungjun's gaze softened. "Then let me make it official." Mariah's hands trembled. "You're asking again?" Sungjun nodded once. "Always again." Mariah's tears fell freely now. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Sungjun's exhale broke like a dam. He slid the ring onto her finger with hands that were steady even though his eyes were not. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms. The kiss he gave her was soft, slow, full of relief and devotion. No performance. Just love that had survived. Fear. A month later, the ceremony was small. Not because Sungjun couldn't afford a spectacle, because he didn't want strangers swallowing what belonged to them. The wedding took place in a quiet garden outside Seoul, surrounded by tall trees and gentle lights, strung like stars. Mariah wore a simple gown that made her look like herself, curvy, radiant, real. Sungjun wore black, expression controlled, but his gaze when he looked at her was anything but. When she walked toward him, his hands trembled. No one spoke about it, but Mariah saw, and it made her love him more. Soojin stood nearby, eyes discreetly wet, pretending it was just wind. As Mariah reached Sungjun, he took her hands and held them like he was afraid she'd vanish if he loosened his grip. "You're shaking," Mariah whispered. Sungjun's voice was quiet. "I waited too long for this." Mariah's eyes burned. "We're here." Sungjun's gaze softened with unbearable tenderness. "Yes." He murmured, "We're here." When it was time for vows, Sungjun didn't speak like a man performing for guests. He spoke like a man telling the truth. "I will never use my love to control you," he said quietly. "I will use it to protect you." Mariah's breath shook. "I will not demand your strength," he continued. "I will offer you rest." Mariah's tears fell. "And when fear returns," he said, voice rough, "I will find you there and bring you back to yourself." Mariah whispered, "I love you." Seung-jun's gaze held hers. "I know." He smiled slightly, rare, soft. "And I love you," he said, "more than my power." The kiss that followed wasn't dramatic. It was sweet. It was healing. It felt like a home being built. After the ceremony later that night, they returned to the penthouse, still guarded, still protected, but now filled with something new. Peace. Mariah stood at the window in Seung-jun's shirt, hair loose, the ring catching. Light. Seung-jun stepped behind her, arms around her waist. "You look happy," he murmured. Mariah leaned back into him. "I feel safe." Seung-jun's breath paused. "Good." Mariah turned in his arms, fingers tracing his jaw gently. "You're still tense," she whispered. Seung-jun's eyes softened. "I don't know how to stop watching the door." Mariah rose onto her toes and kissed him softly. "You don't have to stop," she murmured. "Just let me be the reason you relax sometimes." Seung-jun's gaze darkened with tenderness. He kissed her again, slow, careful, deepening into warmth. When the moment grew heavier, he paused, forehead against hers. "You can say no," he whispered. Mariah's throat tightened. "I'm not saying no." Seung-jun's arms tightened gently. The intimacy that followed was private, fade to black, filled with softness and whispered reassurances, more emotion than heat, more devotion than urgency. And when Mariah woke, later wrapped in his arms, she realized something startling. She wasn't afraid he'd regret her in the morning, because he was already holding her like he'd chosen her again. The following weeks were sweeter than Mariah expected life could be. Seung-jun brought her breakfast without being asked. He learned her favorite songs. He started leaving small notes in places she'd find, inside her book, on the bathroom mirror, beside her tea. Not dramatic, just present. And when she laughed, really laughed, Seung-jun would pause like he was memorizing the sound. One afternoon, Mariah caught him watching her from the doorway. "What?" she asked, smiling. Seung-jun's eyes softened. "You look like you belong here." Mariah's throat tightened. "I do." Seung-jun stepped closer. "Say it again." Mariah lifted her chin. "I belong with you." Seung-jun's expression shifted. Something tender, almost hungry, like those words fed a part of him that had been starving for years. He kissed her forehead. "Good," he murmured, "because I'm not letting you go." A few months later, Mariah woke up feeling strange, not sick, just off. She stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection, palm resting on her stomach without thinking. Seung-jun knocked softly. "Mariah." She turned the sink on. "Give me a minute." He didn't push, but she could feel his presence outside the door like a steady anchor. Mariah's hands trembled as she opened the cabinet, pulled out a test. She didn't know why she had one. Maybe part of her had been hoping. Maybe part of her had been afraid to hope. Minutes passed, like hours. Mariah sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the small window on the test. When the second line appeared, her breath caught so hard it hurt. She covered her mouth. Tears spilled, not from fear, from the quiet, overwhelming sweetness of it. A family. After everything. A gentle knock came again. "Mariah," her voice shook, "I'm coming." She stepped out slowly. Seung-jun stood there, hair slightly messy, face still half asleep, but his eyes instantly alert when he saw her expression. "What is it?" he asked softly, like he was afraid to break her. Mariah held the test behind her back for a second, trying to breathe. Seung-jun stepped closer. "Mariah," her voice cracked, "I need you to promise you won't panic." Seung-jun's jaw flexed. I don't panic. Mariah's eyes filled. Promise anyway. Seung-jun swallowed. I promise. Mariah brought the test forward. Seung-jun stared at it. For a second, he didn't move. His face went blank. Not cold, not hard, just stunned. Mariah's heart fluttered nervously. Say something. Seung-jun's eyes lifted to hers slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was rough and almost broken. Is this real? Mariah nodded, tears falling. Yes. Seung-jun stepped forward so fast she barely had time to breathe before he pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. His shoulders shook once. Mariah froze. Are you? Seung-jun's voice came out hoarse. Don't leave me. Mariah blinked. What? Seung-jun pulled back just enough to look at her. His eyes were wet. He didn't bother hiding it. I didn't know life could give me this, he whispered. Mariah's chest ached. Seung-jun. His hand slid to her stomach gently, like he was afraid to touch too hard. His voice dropped, reverent. Our child. Mariah nodded, crying and laughing at the same time. Seung-jun kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then her lips softly like he was worshipping the moment. I will protect you both, he whispered. Mariah exhaled shakily. I know. Seung-jun's gaze hardened for a second, not at her, but at the world. Anyone who tries to reach you now, he murmured, will learn what mercy looks like when I'm forced to choose. Mariah cupped his face. Choose love, she whispered. Not blood. Seung-jun's eyes softened again. I am, he said quietly. I already did. By the end of the year, Mariah's belly began to show. Seung-jun became even more careful, walking on the outside of sidewalks, checking door locks twice, refusing to let her carry anything heavy, warming her tea exactly right. Mariah teased him gently. You're going to smother me. Seung-jun's eyes softened. Good. Mariah laughed. That's not normal. Seung-jun leaned down, pressing a kiss to her temple. Normal never loved you properly. Mariah's throat tightened. She realized then that the sweetness wasn't just in big moments. It was in the small ones, in the way he listened, in the way he watched her like she was precious, not because she needed him, but because he wanted her safe, in the way he still asked, even after she'd said yes 100 times. Later that night, Mariah stood on the balcony again, one hand resting on her belly, the city glowing below. Seung-jun stepped behind her. He wrapped his arms around her carefully, then lowered his head to her shoulder. Do you ever think about that day? Mariah whispered. Seung-jun's voice was quiet. The boardroom. Mariah nodded. I thought my life was ending. Seung-jun tightened his arms gently. It was beginning. Mariah turned slightly, looking up at him. You saved me, she whispered. Seung-jun shook his head slowly. No. Mariah frowned. Seung-jun's voice softened. You saved yourself. I just arrived when the world tried to convince you you were alone. Mariah's eyes burned. She leaned into him. I'm not alone anymore. Seung-jun pressed a kiss to her hair. Never again. A few weeks later, as snow fell gently over Seoul, Mariah sat on the couch with a blanket, her belly round, her eyes sleepy. Seung-jun knelt in front of her, resting his cheek against her stomach as if listening. Mariah laughed softly. What are you doing? Seung-jun's voice was quiet. Waiting. Mariah smiled. For what? Seung-jun lifted his gaze to hers, expression softer than she'd ever seen. For the moment our child hears my voice and knows, he murmured, that this world might be cruel, but their father will always be kinder. Mariah's throat tightened. Seung-jun stood and kissed her gently, slow, sweet, full of promise. Mariah rested her forehead against his. We made it. Seung-jun's eyes held hers. We did. Mariah smiled through tears. And you didn't abandon me after the dark parts. Seung-jun's voice went low. I don't abandon what I love. Mariah whispered, even when it's hard? Sungjoon's gaze softened, especially then. Outside, the city continued to move, busy, loud, alive. But inside the penthouse, the world felt quiet, not because danger no longer existed, but because love had built a place stronger than fear. Sungjoon tucked the blanket around Mariah carefully, then sat beside her, one arm around her shoulders, the other hand resting gently on her belly. Mariah's eyes drifted closed, safe enough to sleep. Sungjoon watched her for a long time, his expression calm, protective, quietly grateful. Then he whispered so softly it was almost a prayer. I found you. Mariah, half asleep, murmured back, You didn't find me. Sungjoon's lips curved faintly. Then what did I do? Mariah smiled without opening her eyes. You chose me. Sungjoon's voice broke just slightly. Yes, he whispered, and I will keep choosing you. And as the snow fell outside and their future waited inside her heartbeat, Mariah finally believed something she'd never been allowed to believe before. That love could be dangerous and sweet at the same time, that a man feared by everyone could be gentle with her, that she didn't have to prove her worth to be protected. She only had to be loved, and she was. Fully. Forever. Before you go, like this video if Sungjoon's love felt intense in the best way. Subscribe for more Afro Korean dark romance stories with real emotions and heavy twists. And comment one word, choice, if you believe Mariah made the right decision. Or run if you think love that dangerous is a red flag.